Hey everyone, this is Ashley with C-Team Rena Digitals. I'm going to do a tutorial on how to use the floral ring backdrops in Photoshop. I'm going to do two. I have my images open that I want to use already. I'm going to do one on white and I'm going to do one on a darker backdrop. It's so much easier to do composites when there's a gown rather than just feet, because it's a lot harder to add shadow. Just keep that in mind when you're shooting to use a digital backdrop, that it's going to be easier for you to edit and transfer that. So I'm going to start with the white one. I'm going to go ahead and go to my image. Sorry, this is like in my way here. Okay, I'm going to go up to my quick selection tool, select subject. I'm going to zoom in and fix pieces of the selection that it didn't get. I'd rather select a little bit more than not enough because you don't want pieces of your subject missing. You can fast forward through this part, but sorry, my phone's going off. Okay, that looks good. Edit, copy, paste. Now the light is coming from this side, and on her the light is coming from this side. So you can either flip the backdrop or you can flip your subject. I am going to flip my subject. I'm going to click on the box. I get this question a lot. Make sure it show transform controls is clicked. So you can actually resize your subject. When you click on it, if this is checked right here, it's going to keep the proportions and size your subject. If you unclick it, you kind of have free range to do whatever you want. I typically like to do it like this, but for this one, I'm going to leave that checked to keep my proportions. I'm going to right click inside the box and I'm just going to flip horizontally. Okay. Size her. I try to look at, like, the floral ring can be as big or small as you want it to be. So I kind of go off the walls. Of course, the walls can be tall or they can be short. You're never going to know, but I just do it until it looks kind of how I want it to look, which I think that looks good. So now, obviously, not obviously, but I did not shoot her session before I made this backdrop, but I know when I made this backdrop that it was a bright white, that I had a bright white photo to use with it. So I'm just going to click on her first. I'm going to create a layer mask, and I'm going to make sure that there's nothing I need to brush off of her in any area. Use a small brush at 100% opacity, black. There's some areas that are on here that I didn't want. See, there's like these little areas of her tattoos. I'm just going to go over to my clone tool. Tattoos can be hard for composites for this reason, but I'm just going to fill in. This is so minor and minuscule that it's probably not even going to be noticeable, but I'm still going to fix it. Selected her pretty good, so I shouldn't have to brush off much of anything. I'm going to go down to the bottom of her brush. Go back to my layer mask. Keep 100% opacity, but I'm going to do a smaller brush, and I'm just going to brush off the edge so it's not so sharp of the bottom of her dress. These tutorials are only going to be available after purchase now, so please don't share them with anybody. Okay. I'm going to add shadow to the backdrop real quick, so I'm going to duplicate my background layer. I try to make my brush size about what I think her shadow would be on the floor. Sometimes you gotta mess with it. I'm just gonna do this size. I'm going to, sorry, I didn't want to duplicate my layer. I want to make a new layer. Multiply. Go over to your brush. I hold down the Alt key to select the color that I want in the background. And I want a dark part of the floor. I'm just gonna click over here. And I'm going to do it at 100% opacity first. Just going to brush like that. And then I can lower my opacity. It's a lot easier to do it at 100% sometimes and lower your opacity than try to brush it on little by little. I'm going to create a layer mask. My black brush. I'm going to do 100% first because this shadow right here shouldn't be there. So I'm going to brush that off there a little bit. Actually need to brush it back on a tiny bit. Red to brush back, or white to brush back on. And see how that's going to brush just that part back on. I just go back and forth with my shadows. You don't want it to be too sharp of a shadow coming off, but you also don't want it to be, you want it to look realistic. Okay. That's good. I'm going to lower the opacity. And I'm going to make my brush bigger. I'm going to do like 20% opacity. Black brush. And I'm just going to fade the edge of this real quick. Okay. So now her dress. It doesn't look too bad. I don't feel like there's much I need to do to the bottom of her dress, but the floor is much brighter. So I'm just gonna go, you can either create a new layer and you can brush it on, or you can go use your dodge tool to make it brighter. There's multiple different ways you could do it. I'm actually gonna create a new layer. I'll right click, or you could press Alt and click between the layers. I'm going to right click and create clipping mask. That way it's only on her and it's not on the floor. I'm going to keep my brush at about 20% opacity. I'm going to select the white on the floor and I'm just going to brush it onto her dress to make it blend better. Sorry if you hear my phone buzzing. And you can mess with the opacity. If you were to just brush dodge on her, you wouldn't be able to adjust the opacity. Okay, my backdrop has a lot more contrast than she does. So I'm going to click on her. I'm going to go up to my adjustments. I'm going to go to my brightness and contrast, and I'm just going to up my contrast on her. She's a little bit more shadow on her face than I want. I'm just going to click on her. Oh, you go to my dodge tool. Shadows, I have it about 19%, and I'm just gonna get rid of some of the shadows because this is a pretty bright picture. Midtones. I'm gonna add some blur to the background and to her. As you can see, if you zoom in, like there's still some really sharp areas in the backdrop. It wouldn't look like that if there was a subject in front of it. A lot of people forget to do this, but to make it look more realistic, I already duplicated my background layer and I didn't do anything on it, so I can technically use this layer, but I'm going to duplicate it again anyway, so that I know that I'm only doing this on that. Blur, Gaussian blur, and you have to try to, like, however far away from the backdrop they look like they are. Obviously, this is way too much blur. She is not that far away from the backdrop, and that doesn't look realistic. For these types where they're not too far, I like to do about 2. And obviously you can mess with it. If you go back in, so you can see that the background is still, you can see it plenty well enough, but she's still more in focus. And then I'm going to go to her, and I'm going to go to my blur tool, 100%, and I'm just going to go around to the very edge of her body and add blur, because it's going to fall off of her naturally with the camera. So the focus is going to naturally fall off of her on the edges. And now see, this is kind of blending into the backdrop with the amount of blur. I usually don't add blur to the hair in many spots. Definitely never the face. Okay. Now if I take and merge the layers for her, and I merge my backdrop layers before, well, other than the shadow, after. Okay, so I'm happy. I'm happy with that one. Okay, now I'm going to do a darker one. With this, I use my color change action on her dress. It was initially green, and I'm putting it, which would probably be pretty to do green in this one too, but I liked the pink. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten that. Select subject. Zoom in. I didn't really perfect the color change because I knew I was going to be using it for this. So if there's parts that on her body that are a little pink, that's okay. Okay, looks good enough. Copy, paste. Now this one's going to be easier because the way the floor is, you're not even going to see the bottom of her dress, but it's still going to look natural. Okay, I'm going to keep my dimensions. I need to flip her though, because the light is coming from over here. Flip horizontal. Scale her. Naturally she'd be like right here. Okay, I think I'm going to extend the backdrop, so I will show you how to do that real fast. This honestly isn't really part of the tutorial, but if you're needing like a little bit more floor, I'm going to go ahead and extend or duplicate my backdrop. I'm going to go over to my marquee tool. Sorry. First, I'm going to move this up a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to go to my marquee tool, and I'm going to select a little bit. If I hide this one, above here, select that, and then go to my move tool. Oops, I'm on the wrong layer. And I'm just going to drag. Oh, see, this is why I don't like to keep that checked. undo, click, make sure you're not keeping your dimensions. Unclick this right here. Drag. And you have more floor, and it's not going to be noticeable enough in the picture to just extend that a little bit. Now I'm just going to get rid of, actually she might be standing there, let me see. Yep, that's covered, so that doesn't even matter. If you need to blend it a little bit, if there's lines, just go to your healing tool and just like using your clone tool, except it's way better. And just brush on the texture from above. Because I know some of these floors can be short, but it's an easy fix. Okay. So I'm going to grab her again and move her up. Trying to get her feet to where they would be on the floor. I like to zoom out to see their proportions to the photo. Okay, I like that. I think that looks good. So this one's super easy for shadow. Since most of the bottom of her is at the bottom of the backdrop, I'm just going to create a new layer above the background, multiply, grab my brush, 100%, get a dark spot of the floor, and brush shadow, which there's going to be shadow under here too, because her dress is there. You can mess with the opacity a little bit, or you can create a layer mask, because it's going to be dark under here. I don't want it as dark over here though, so I'm going to do like 20% black brush and brush the shadow off a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go up to her layer. I'm going to add more contrast to her. Make sure this is checked right here so it's not adding contrast to your backdrop too. Okay, and I'm going to add more light coming down this way on her. I'm just going to use my dodge tool. And I'm going to add a little bit more shadow. I'm going to create a new layer above her, multiply, brush. I'm going to do 20%, select a dark part of her brush, and I'm going to brush on a little bit more shadow at the bottom of her brush. You need to play around with the light. Like it's not ever going to completely match a digital unless you're very, very specific during your session. I'm going to add some shadow to this part too. So I'm already have like that red selected for her dress. Still need to brush parts of her off too. And then I'm going to select her arm color to add shadow to that side of her arm. See, it just added a lot more depth because it's dark over here. So this side of her is going to be darker. Okay, I'm going to create a layer mask on her because there's spots in here that definitely need fixed. %. And I didn't select enough of her arm right there, so I'm just going to click on her, clone tool, fixed. Okay. I don't want to take too long to clean this up. You guys know how to do that by now, I would guess. Plus I just did it in the other one I did right before this, but I would go and I would get rid of like all this like dark line. There's a part of her dress, but I'm not worrying about that. Okay, now I'm going to merge her layers, and then I am going to, what did I just do? Oh, I thought it did something. Okay, and then I'm going to add the blur. So I'm going to add blur to the background, duplicate my layer, blur, Gaussian blur, and it's already at 2. That's what I want. I'm going to create a layer mask, 100% black, and I'm going to brush it off the floor because I want that to be sharp with her dress. Go back up to her, and I'm going to add the blur to her edges now. I've also seen just recently people use the ring backdrops for like actual like just overlays to keep like their original setup and backdrop. You can completely obviously use them like that too, but I like to use these backdrops as the full backdrop. I'm actually gonna, there's parts of her hair that I'm gonna fix a little bit. Okay. I'm gonna add a little bit of shadow to her foot. Minor, but 20%. Brush. I'm going to select the color of her foot, and I'm just going to brush some shadow. I'm going to brush some more shadow down. Whoops. Just kidding. If you're doing it, or no, I'm not kidding. Make sure that you create your clipping mask so it's just on her. I'm going to add some shadow down here too. Okay. This needs to be, her dress needs to be a little bit brighter over here. Just like a tiny bit. Shadow. I wasn't on her. Make sure you're on her layer. Or the dress layer. Okay. I like it. I think it looks good. I might mess with the shadows on her face, maybe a little bit. Or actually, oops. I'm going to add a new contrast layer. I'm going to bring down the contrast. I'm going to press Control or Command I to invert the layer because I don't want it on anything but her face. And then I'm going to take my white brush at 100%. And I'm just going to brush some of the contrast off her face. That looks way better. It was way too red. Okay, flatten my image. Right click, flatten. Just saying discard hidden layers. It was just that background layer that I was playing with before. Actually, just kidding. I am going to merge my background layers. Create a new layer. Multiply. I want to add some shadow to the florals over here because she's pretty close to that. 20% opacity. Select a dark part of the floral right there and just add some shadow to the backdrop. Create another one. I like to do my shadows on different layers. That way, if I just need to get rid of one, it's way easier. Okay, that's better. Now I'm going to flatten. And that's it. If you guys have any questions, message me on Etsy or please join my Facebook group. studio maternity inspiration with CT and Rena. I answer questions in there. I post all my listings in there once I get them in the shop. People share their work. It's growing. I've just created it not too long ago. But I would love for you to join. If you like the products, if you love them, please leave me a review. It's greatly appreciated. And if you have an image that you want to share with your review, I always love seeing it. I take a lot of time creating my listings and my backdrops and also doing my tutorials, obviously. But yeah, I would greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions about the backdrops or you're not happy with something, please don't just go into my Etsy shop and leave me a negative review. If you're not sure about something, message me. I'm there to help.